Amara stumbled through the golden revolving doors of Stellato, Seattle's most exclusive restaurant, her breath catching with each painful step. Her trembling fingers clutched a serving tray like a shield, eyes desperately scanning the dimly lit space for the man everyone feared. But she now needed more than air itself. "Please," she whispered, approaching his private table where he sat alone, reviewing documents with a glass of amber liquid untouched beside him. "My husband will kill me this time. I have nowhere else to go." Her voice broke on the last word, the bruise darkening her cheekbone impossible to hide under the restaurant's unforgiving lights. Christian looked up, piercing blue eyes assessing the terrified waitress standing before him, noting the violet marks blooming across her face and the way she favored her left side. He'd watched her work for weeks, efficient, quiet, and clearly hiding from something. The mafia boss closed his leather portfolio with deliberate slowness, motioning to the empty chair across from him with a subtle nod. "Sit," he commanded, his voice surprisingly gentle despite the hardness in his expression. The single word carried the weight of an empire built on unwavering authority. "I don't have money," Amara blurted, tears threatening to spill as she perched on the edge of the seat, ready to flee. "But I'll do anything. Clean your houses, cook. Whatever you need if you can just hide me for a few days." Christian signaled to his bodyguard with the slightest tilt of his head, watching as the man moved toward the kitchen exit to secure it. "Your husband," he stated rather than asked, "has friends in the police department, doesn't he?" His fingers drummed once against the polished table surface before going still. Amara's eyes widened in surprise, a single tear finally breaking free and trailing down her bruised cheek. "How did you know?" she whispered, suddenly wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. "The same reason you came to me instead of them," Christian replied, pulling out his phone and typing a brief message. "My car will be at the back entrance in 3 minutes. I suggest you decide quickly." He didn't look up as he spoke, giving her the illusion of choice they both knew she didn't have. The decision crystallized in her mind. Certain death at home or unknown dangers with this man who controlled Seattle's underworld, with a reputation both terrifying and oddly honorable. Amara stood on shaky legs, removing her apron and name tag with trembling fingers. "Smart girl," Christian murmured, standing and placing his suit jacket around her shoulders in one fluid motion. "Keep your head down until we reach the car, and from this moment on, you're under my protection." The weight of his words settled over her with unexpected comfort, even as warning bells sounded in her mind. The staff members averted their eyes, pretending not to notice as the feared mafia boss escorted their newest waitress through the kitchen. No one would dare mention what they'd seen, not when Christian Hayes owned not just the restaurant, but half the businesses along the waterfront. Outside, rain pelted against them as a sleek black Bentley pulled to the curb, its engine purring quietly in the night. "Once you get in," Christian warned, his breath warm against her ear, "there's no going back to your old life. Do you understand?" His hand hovered at the small of her back, not quite touching, respecting boundaries her own husband never had. Headlights swept across the alley, illuminating them momentarily before darkness reclaimed the space. Amara looked up into Christian's face, seeing not the monster of rumors but something unexpectedly human in his eyes. "I understand," she whispered, stepping toward the waiting car and the unknown future it represented. "My old life ended the moment I asked for your help." She slid into the leather interior, its warmth enveloping her like a forbidden promise. The car door closed with a quiet thud that somehow sounded final, sealing her fate as Christian settled beside her. "Take us home, Rick," he instructed the driver, his gaze never leaving Amara's face as the restaurant and her past disappeared into the rainy Seattle night. The mansion loomed before them, a sprawling testament to power and wealth nestled among towering pines that shielded it from prying eyes. Amara pressed her forehead against the cool window of the Bentley, wondering if she'd traded one prison for another. "You'll stay in the East Wing," Christian stated, scrolling through messages on his phone as the gate swung open with silent precision. "My staff has been instructed to provide whatever you need, but they won't ask questions." His tone was businesslike, as if sheltering battered waitresses was a regular occurrence in his world of crime and luxury. The car rolled to a stop beneath a covered entrance, where a woman in a tailored suit stood waiting, her expression carefully neutral as she opened Amara's door. "This is Diane, my head of household security," Christian explained as he exited the vehicle. "She'll ensure your safety within these walls, though I doubt your husband would be foolish enough to look for you here." Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers as they entered the foyer, the opulence a stark contrast to the modest apartment Amara had fled. She clutched Christian's jacket tighter around her shoulders, feeling wildly out of place in her waitress uniform. "The doctor will see you in the study," Diane informed them, leading the way through corridors lined with artwork, worth more than Amara would earn in several lifetimes. "He's been briefed on discretion requirements." Her heels clicked against the marble with military precision, each step communicating efficiency and control. Christian noted Amara's hesitation, the way her steps faltered at the mention of a doctor. "Standard procedure," he explained, his tone softening slightly. "Documentation of injuries creates leverage should we need it later." A distinguished older man waited in a book-lined room, medical bag open on an antique desk. "Miss," he greeted with a respectful nod, gesturing to a leather chair positioned beneath a warm lamp. "May I?" His kind eyes held none of the judgment or suspicion Amara had grown accustomed to from medical professionals. "You can trust Dr. Bennett," Christian assured her, moving to leave the room. "When you're finished, Diane will show you to your quarters. We'll discuss arrangements tomorrow." He paused at the threshold, adding almost as an afterthought, "No one will hurt you here, Amara." After the examination, Amara followed Diane through the labyrinthine hallways to a suite larger than her entire apartment. "The closet has been stocked with basics in your size," the woman explained, demonstrating the security panel by the door. "The bathroom has first aid supplies and anything else you might need for tonight. The code changes daily. You'll receive it each morning," Diane continued, her professional demeanor briefly giving way to something resembling compassion. "No one enters without your permission, not even Mr. Hayes." She handed Amara a small device that resembled a stylish pendant. "Panic button. Press it, and I'll be here in under 30 seconds, no matter the time." Amara sank onto the edge of a bed so luxurious it seemed to embrace her, the events of the night catching up in a wave of exhaustion and delayed terror. "What happens now?" she whispered, more to herself than to Diane. "Now you rest," the woman answered simply, moving toward the door. "Tomorrow you begin learning the rules of survival in our world. And believe me, they're quite different from what you're used to." With that cryptic statement, she left, the door closing with a soft click that somehow sounded like the final turning of a key. The bedroom fell silent except for the gentle patter of rain against floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked manicured gardens shrouded in darkness. Amara's reflection stared back at her, bruised, frightened, but somehow still standing, as she contemplated the bizarre twist of fate that had delivered her from one dangerous man into the home of another. Security cameras blinked silently from discreet corners of the property, as Christian watched the perimeter monitors, phone pressed to his ear. "Find everything you can on Peter Reed," he instructed someone on the other end. "Tax records, employment history, known associates, especially anything connecting him to the Kovalevs." His eyes narrowed as he ended the call, attention returning to the security feed, showing Amara's lights still on at this late hour. Sunlight streamed through unfamiliar curtains as Amara jolted awake, momentarily disoriented until the events of the previous night crashed back into her consciousness. The bruises on her ribs throbbed with each breath, a painful reminder of what she'd escaped. A soft knock at the door preceded Diane's entrance, the woman carrying a breakfast tray and a tablet. "Mr. Hayes requests your presence in his office at 10, she announced, placing the tray on a nearby table. "He's gathered information you should see." Her efficiency was comforting in its predictability, a stark contrast to the chaotic uncertainty that had defined Amara's marriage. Amara showered carefully, avoiding the tender spots mapped across her body, before selecting the simplest outfit from the surprisingly tasteful wardrobe provided. The clothes fit perfectly, a detail both comforting and unsettling in its precision. She wondered just how long Christian had been watching her, planning this moment, using her as a chess piece in a game she hadn't known she was playing. Christian stood as she entered his office, gesturing to a chair positioned beside rather than across from his imposing desk. "Your husband filed a missing persons report this morning," he stated without preamble, turning his laptop screen toward her. "Apparently, he's very concerned about your mental health and safety." The police report displayed on screen contained a photo of Amara from happier days, alongside details that painted her as mentally unstable and potentially dangerous. "He's claiming I'm off my medication," she whispered, horror washing over her in cold waves. "I've never been prescribed anything in my life. What's more concerning," Christian continued, bringing up another document, "is his connection to Judge Porter, who conveniently signed emergency committal papers based on your history of delusions and self-harm." His voice remained calm, but Amara noticed the tightening of his jaw, a small tell that betrayed controlled anger beneath his composed exterior. Amara's fingers unconsciously traced the cigarette burn on her forearm, a self-inflicted injury her husband had explained to emergency room staff 6 months earlier. "They'll be looking for me at hospitals and women's shelters," she realized aloud. "They already are," Christian confirmed, leaning back in his chair with calculated casualness that didn't match the intensity in his eyes. "Which brings us to an uncomfortable truth about your situation, and why I agreed to help." He paused, studying her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, something between calculation and concern. He pulled up another file, this one containing surveillance photos of her husband meeting with a man Amara didn't recognize. "Peter Reed, your husband, has been working with the Kovalev family for at least a year, running money through that restaurant where you both worked." The photos were clearly taken with a long-range lens, the kind used by professional surveillance teams or law enforcement. "But we own that restaurant," Amara began, then stopped as the implications of Christian's statement sank in. "The competing families you mentioned last night, you're at war with the Kovalevs." Her voice grew steadier, mind working through connections she'd been too terrified to see before. "Not war, yet," Christian corrected, his expression hardening into something ancient and dangerous. "But your husband's embezzlement from their operations has accelerated tensions, and your knowledge makes you valuable to both sides." He swiped to another photo, this one showing Peter entering a warehouse owned by one of Seattle's most notorious crime families. Amara stood abruptly, pacing to the window overlooking immaculately landscaped grounds where armed men patrolled with military precision. "So I'm not a charity case, I'm leverage," she stated flatly, surprising herself with the lack of fear in her voice. "You're both," Christian replied, joining her at the window, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne, but careful not to crowd her, "and potentially a witness who can help dismantle operations that have brought drugs and trafficking into my territory." His reflection in the glass revealed no deception, only a calculated honesty she found strangely refreshing after years of her husband's lies. Amara turned to face him fully, chin lifted in a defiance she hadn't felt in years. "If I help you, what do I get in return?" The question hung between them, transforming her from victim to negotiator in the space of 7 words. "Because if I'm risking my life against the Kovalevs and my husband, I want more than temporary shelter." Christian's lips curved in what might have been respect or amusement. Perhaps both. "What do you want, Amara Reed?" he asked softly, her married name a reminder of all she stood to lose and gain. "Tell me, and if it's within my considerable power, it's yours." The promise felt binding, as though spoken in blood rather than words. "Freedom," Amara answered without hesitation, meeting Christian's gaze steadily. "A new identity, enough money to disappear, and your word that neither the Kovalevs nor my husband will ever find me once this is over." Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained firm. Christian considered her for a moment, before extending his hand. "You have my word," he agreed, his grip warm and solid as they sealed their arrangement. "Now let me show you what we're up against." He guided her to a hidden panel that slid away to reveal a secure room filled with surveillance equipment and digital displays. The next 2 weeks established a routine unlike anything in Amara's previous life. Mornings spent with Christian reviewing documents and identifying Kovalev associates. Afternoons training with Diane in basic self-defense. She learned to channel her fear into something productive, something dangerous. "Again," Diane instructed, circling Amara on the training mat as sweat dripped down her temples. "Your husband will expect you to cower. Your advantage lies in surprising him." She demonstrated the escape technique once more, movements efficient and lethal in their simplicity. Christian watched from the doorway, arms crossed as Amara successfully flipped Diane, a move that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. "Your bruises are healing," he observed later, as they shared dinner in the kitchen rather than the formal dining room. "But you still favor your left side when you think no one's watching." "Old habits," Amara admitted, twirling pasta around her fork. "Peter always came at me from the right. I learned to protect that side first." She spoke matter-of-factly, the shame that had once accompanied these admissions gradually replaced by analytical distance. Night brought nightmares that sent Amara wandering through the mansion's silent corridors, eventually finding her way to the library where Christian often worked until dawn. "Trouble sleeping?" he asked the 3rd time this happened, closing his laptop without waiting for her response. Instead of answering, she gestured to the chessboard set up near the fireplace. "Teach me," she requested, settling into the chair opposite his. "I want to understand how you think, how you strategize." What she didn't say was how his presence calmed the frantic beating of her heart. Christian's fingers brushed against hers as he positioned the pieces, explaining each one's movement and value. "The queen is the most powerful piece on the board," he told her, holding the black queen between them. "Underestimated by opponents who focus only on the king's vulnerability." "Why did you really help me that night?" Amara asked suddenly, the question that had lingered between them finally finding voice. "It wasn't just about the Kovalevs. You could have used me as an informant without bringing me here." Something shifted in Christian's expression, a momentary softening around eyes that had seen too much darkness. "My mother didn't escape her husband," he answered quietly, the confession clearly costing him. "I was 8 when he finally killed her after years of accidents that the police conveniently ignored. The silence that followed wasn't awkward but connecting, a bridge forming between their separate traumas. "I'm sorry," Amara whispered, reaching across the board to touch his hand, the first contact she had initiated with any man since fleeing her husband. Christian turned his palm upward, fingers gently closing around hers. "The past shapes us, but it doesn't have to define us," he said, the philosophy clearly hard-won. "Remember that when you doubt your strength." A phone call interrupted their moment, Christian's expression immediately shifting back to the controlled mask of a mafia boss. "They found your husband's warehouse," he informed her after a tense conversation. "Tomorrow we move against the Kovalevs." The chess pieces gleamed in the firelight as Amara contemplated her position, no longer a pawn, but not yet a queen, caught in a dangerous game where the next move could mean freedom or destruction. "I'm ready," she decided, standing with newfound purpose. The warehouse sprawled across the industrial district, its unremarkable exterior concealing the nerve center of the Kovalev family's Seattle operations. Amara studied the blueprints spread across the table in Christian's war room, identifying entry points and security cameras with growing confidence. "Peter always kept the ledgers in his office safe," she explained, pointing to a room near the loading dock. "The combination is my birth date. He thought it was romantic, using the day I became his as his security code." The bitterness in her voice was tempered now by determination. Christian's lieutenants exchanged glances, clearly impressed by her detailed knowledge of the operation. "The raid happens tonight," Christian announced, his authority absolute as he assigned positions. "We need those ledgers before the Kovalevs realize we're making a move." Rain pounded against the bulletproof windows of the SUV as they parked 2 blocks from the target, Amara dressed entirely in black with a communication device tucked discreetly in her ear. "Stay behind me," Christian instructed, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "If anything feels wrong, we abort immediately." The security guard never saw them coming, unconscious before he could reach his radio. 10 minutes until shift change. Diane's voice crackled through their earpieces as Christian disabled the alarm system with codes Amara had provided. Navigating the darkened warehouse felt surreal, like walking through the setting of her nightmares with the power to change the ending. "This way," Amara whispered, leading Christian through a maze of shipping containers toward the administrative offices. Peter's private office remained exactly as Amara remembered, meticulously organized chaos that only made sense to him, photographs of her smiling face watching from silver frames that now seemed like mockeries. "The safe is behind that painting," she indicated, turning away from her documented happiness. Christian removed the artwork, revealing the wall safe just as Amara had described. "Your birth date," he confirmed, looking to her for the exact numbers. "Month, day, year?" "No," Amara corrected, a cold smile playing at her lips. "Just month and day repeated." He wasn't creative enough to remember 4 different digits. Her fingers spun the dial with practiced precision. Euro 7230723. The safe swung open to reveal not only ledgers, but flash drives and stacks of cash bundled with Kovalev family markers. "More than we expected," Christian murmured, efficiently transferring everything into a secure bag. "This will cripple their operation and give us enough evidence for my contacts in the FBI." Amara froze as footsteps sounded in the corridor, too heavy to be Diane's, too familiar in their rhythm. "He's here," she breathed, panic momentarily overtaking her training. "Peter shouldn't be here tonight. It's his poker game with the commissioner." Christian immediately shifted positions, placing himself between Amara and the door as it swung open to reveal her husband's shocked face. "Well," Peter said after a moment of stunned silence, his handsome features contorting with rage, "if it isn't my mentally unstable runaway wife." "Hello, Peter," Amara replied, her voice steadier than she felt as she stepped out from behind Christian. "Surprised to see me somewhere besides a hospital bed or morgue." The man who had once terrified her now seemed smaller somehow, his power diminished by her newfound strength. Peter's attention shifted to Christian, recognition dawning with dangerous implications. "Hayes," he spat, hand moving toward the weapon Amara knew he kept holstered at his back. "Should have known you'd try to poach Kovalev territory, but stealing my wife, that's personal." "She came to me," Christian replied, his voice deadly calm as he leveled his weapon at Peter's chest. "And unlike you, I understand her value extends beyond ownership." His finger rested lightly on the trigger, the decision to end a life hanging in the balance. "Don't," Amara commanded, surprising both men as she stepped between them. "He's not worth the complications." Her eyes never left Peter's face as she addressed Christian. "We have what we came for. Let the Kovalevs deal with his betrayal." The standoff stretched for 3 heartbeats, before alarms blared throughout the building. "Perimeter breach." Diane's urgent voice came through their earpieces. "Multiple vehicles approaching. Kovalev insignia." The distraction gave Peter just enough time to draw his weapon. Christian moved with inhuman speed, knocking the gun from Peter's hand while simultaneously pulling Amara toward the exit. "Secondary route," he ordered into his comm as they sprinted through the warehouse. "East loading dock, 90 seconds. Gunfire erupted behind them, bullets pinging against metal containers as Kovalev enforcers flooded the warehouse. "They think I betrayed them," Peter shouted, inexplicably running alongside them rather than toward his supposed allies. Andre saw the empty safe. The black SUV screeched to a halt before them at the loading dock, Diane behind the wheel with the rear door already open. "Inside, now," Christian commanded, physically lifting Amara into the vehicle before turning back to find Peter frozen in indecision. "Make your choice," Christian told the man coldly, gun still trained on Amara's husband as Kovalev men closed in. "Die here, or face whatever justice awaits you in the system once these ledgers become evidence." The offer was dispassionate, pragmatic rather than merciful. To Amara's shock, Peter dove into the SUV beside her, desperation replacing the confidence that had defined him throughout their marriage. "Drive," Christian ordered as he claimed the final seat, the vehicle lurching forward as bullets shattered the rear window. Adrenaline coursed through Amara's veins as Diane executed a flawless evasion pattern through Seattle's midnight streets, eventually losing their pursuers in the maze of the industrial district. "Why did you run with us?" she finally asked her husband, maintaining as much distance as the back seat allowed. Peter's laugh held no humor, only bitter resignation. "Because I've been skimming from them for months," he admitted, avoiding her gaze. "The restaurant was just the start. They discovered discrepancies in the books last week but didn't know who to blame." Christian's voice cut through the tension with clinical precision. "So you've been stealing from the family that thinks I just robbed them." His expression remained unreadable as he processed this new complication, while simultaneously funneling their money through your legitimate business. Diane guided the vehicle through the gates of Christian's compound, security personnel immediately surrounding them with weapons drawn. "Take him to the guest house," Christian instructed his men. "Full surveillance, no communications. He doesn't leave that building alive without my authorization." As Peter was escorted away, Amara found herself alone with Christian in the mansion's entrance hall, the night's events settling around them like invisible dust. "You could have let them kill him," she said quietly, searching Christian's face for answers. "It would have been cleaner." "Maybe," he acknowledged, reaching up to gently brush a smudge of warehouse dirt from her cheek. "But you spent 3 years with that man. I wanted his fate to be your choice, not circumstance." The unexpected tenderness in his touch ignited something dangerous between them. Amara stepped closer, drawn by forces she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge during the preceding weeks. "What if I don't want to make that choice yet?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I need time to understand what I really want now?" Christian's expression softened, fingers lingering against her skin with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Then we wait," he replied simply, dropping his hand but maintaining the charged space between them. "Justice and vengeance both keep, Amara. Discovering your own desires shouldn't be rushed." The morning light streamed through Christian's office windows as they assessed the information retrieved from the warehouse. "These ledgers implicate half the Port Authority and 3 city council members," Amara noted, highlighting connections Peter had never bothered to conceal from her. "The Kovalevs have deeper roots than you realized." Christian studied her with undisguised admiration, seeing not the frightened waitress who had stumbled into his restaurant, but a formidable woman coming into her power. "We'll need to move carefully," he agreed, the "we" settling between them with significant weight. "The Kovalevs won't be the only ones hunting us now." 3 days passed in strategic planning. The mansion transformed into a fortress as Christian's network reported increasing Kovalev activity throughout the city. Amara's presence in his home was no longer a secret. Her photograph circulated among rival families with a price attached that grew by the hour. Peter remained in the guest house under guard, cooperating with surprising thoroughness as he detailed the extent of the Kovalev operations. "They're planning something big," he insisted during one interrogation, desperation evident in his disheveled appearance. "Andrei Kovalev wouldn't commit this many resources just for revenge against me or the Ledgers." Christian reviewed the surveillance footage from across Seattle, pattern recognition revealing a disturbing concentration of Kovalev associates around the courthouse and police headquarters. "They're pressuring their contacts in law enforcement," he concluded, sharing his observations with Amara over breakfast. "Your husband's missing persons report gives them official cover to search for you." "He's not my husband anymore," Amara stated firmly. The gold band that had once imprisoned her now locked away in Christian's safe. "Not in any way that matters." The certainty in her voice matched the newfound confidence in her posture as she studied the security reports. Diane entered with a tablet displaying breaking news. Judge Porter announcing an emergency press conference regarding corruption allegations and witness intimidation. "They're going public," Christian realized, immediately reaching for his phone, turning this into a legitimate manhunt. "I need to speak with Peter," Amara decided, rising with determined purpose. "Alone." She held up a hand when Christian began to protest. "He responds differently when you're not there. I'll learn more without your presence intimidating him." The guest house's Spartan furnishings reflected its temporary purpose. Peter's expensive suit exchanged for simple clothes that stripped away his usual armor of wealth and status. "Come to gloat?" he asked when Amara entered. Bitterness etched in the lines around his mouth. "I came for the truth," she replied, maintaining a safe distance as she studied the man who had once been the center of her universe. "What aren't you telling us about the Kovalev's plan?" Her voice betrayed no emotion, nothing he could manipulate or exploit. Peter's facade cracked unexpectedly, fear bleeding through his practiced arrogance. "Tomorrow night," he confessed, eyes darting to the window though it revealed nothing of the outside world. "They're moving their entire operation. Drugs, girls, weapons, everything through the harbor during the charity gala at the Marine Museum. Half the police force will be at that gala," Amara realized, the implication sending ice through her veins. "Along with the mayor, the governor." She stepped closer, searching his face for deception. "Why tell me this now?" "Because Andrei knows I talked," Peter admitted, running shaking hands through his hair. "And his solution isn't prison. It's making an example of both of us." For the first time, Amara saw genuine remorse in the eyes that had watched her suffer countless times without compassion. The mansion erupted into activity as Amara relayed this information, Christian immediately mobilizing his network, while Diane coordinated with trusted contacts in law enforcement. "We need to evacuate the gala without alerting the Kovalevs," Christian strategized, his tactical mind processing contingencies with remarkable speed. "I should be there," Amara insisted, standing her ground when Christian immediately shook his head. "I know the players, the faces. I've served them at enough private parties to recognize everyone in the Kovalev inner circle." She stepped closer, determination radiating from her. "You need me on this, Christian. Stop trying to protect me and start trusting me." The Marine Museum glittered with lights reflecting off the harbor, Seattle's elite arriving in formal attire unaware of the danger lurking beneath the charitable veneer. Amara adjusted her diamond earrings, actually sophisticated communication devices, as Christian helped her from the limousine, his hand protective at the small of her back. "Remember the extraction plan," he murmured, perfectly playing the role of wealthy donor as they ascended the steps. "Diane is positioned near the east exit with a vehicle, and my men are monitoring all access points." His formal attire concealed weapons and body armor, preparation for the confrontation they hoped to avoid. Amara felt strangely calm as they entered the grand hall, her black gown elegant, yet designed for movement if necessary. "Judge Porter at your 2:00, she whispered, accepting a champagne flute she had no intention of drinking. "And the commissioner's wife speaking with Andrei Kovalev's mistress by the ice sculpture." The charity auction proceeded with excruciating normalcy, wealthy patrons bidding on experiences and artwork, while boats loaded with contraband quietly approached the private docks below. "Harbor Patrol is in position," Diane's voice confirmed through their earpieces. "On your signal." Christian maintained his charming facade, strategically moving through the crowd to position key allies, while Amara monitored the Kovalev associates, whose agitation grew more pronounced as the evening progressed. Something's wrong, she realized, noticing their increasingly frequent checks of watches and phones. They're nervous, because their shipment is late, Christian concluded after receiving an update in his earpiece. Harbor Patrol intercepted the first boat. The Kovalevs know something's happening but not who's behind it. His eyes locked with Amara's, silently communicating the escalating danger. The governor approached them, oblivious to the undercurrents of tension electrifying the air. "Mr. Hayes, what a pleasure to see you supporting marine conservation," he boomed, champagne sloshing dangerously close to Amara's gown. "And who is this enchanting companion?" His eyes lingered inappropriately, reminding Amara of countless unwanted advances she'd endured as a waitress. Christian's arm slid possessively around her waist, a gesture both protective and claiming. "This is Amara Reed, my business partner and security consultant," he introduced smoothly, the unexpected title causing her heart to skip. "She's instrumental in restructuring several of my enterprises toward more community-focused initiatives." The subtle warning in Christian's tone registered with the governor, whose smile tightened as he nodded respectfully toward Amara. "Impressive credentials," he acknowledged, before being distracted by commotion near the main entrance, where several of Andre's men were arguing with security. "If you'll excuse me, duty calls." He retreated just as Diane's urgent voice came through their earpieces. "Movement at the loading dock. Armed men boarding the Charity Showcase yacht." The first gunshot shattered both a chandelier and the illusion of safety, screams erupting as Kovalev enforcers revealed concealed weapons. "Everybody down," Christian commanded, instantly shifting from charming donor to protective force as he shielded Amara with his body. Chaos erupted as guests scrambled for exits, unaware they were fleeing directly into the path of arriving police responding to the anonymous tip Christian's team had strategically placed. "We need to reach Andre before he escapes," Amara insisted, pointing toward a service corridor where she'd spotted the Kovalev patriarch slipping away. Christian hesitated only momentarily before nodding, trusting her instincts as they navigated through panicked crowds toward the kitchens. "Stay behind me," he ordered, as they pushed through swinging doors into the relative calm of the service area. Andrei Kovalev stood with his back to them, barking orders into a satellite phone while two bodyguards scanned for threats. "It's over, Andrei," Christian announced, weapon drawn as the older man turned with startled recognition. "The Harbor Patrol has your shipment, the FBI has your ledgers, and your organization is finished in Seattle." "Hayes," Kovalev spat, aged face contorting with hatred as his gaze shifted to Amara with dawning comprehension. "You're the waitress, Peter's wife." His laugh held no humor, only cold calculation. "I see now how my operation was compromised so thoroughly." Sirens wailed outside as law enforcement surrounded the building, tactical teams securing exits and detaining Kovalev associates throughout the venue. "Your men are being arrested as we speak," Christian informed him, weapon unwavering. "You can surrender to me or to them, but either way, your empire falls tonight." Dawn broke over Seattle as Amara stood on the balcony of Christian's mansion, watching news helicopters circle downtown, where the aftermath of the previous night's operation continued to unfold. 37 arrests, Christian reported, joining her with coffee mugs in hand, including Andrei Kovalev and 3 corrupt officials. "And Peter?" Amara asked, accepting the steaming cup with fingers still bearing the faint impressions of a wedding ring long removed. "What happens to him now?" The question contained no emotion, merely practical consideration for loose ends. Christian leaned against the railing beside her, their shoulders almost touching in comfortable proximity. "Federal witness protection," he answered, studying her profile for reaction. "In exchange for testimony against the Kovalevs and their network, he disappears to some small town with a new identity." "Appropriate," Amara nodded, surprising herself with the absence of anger or resentment. Peter had become irrelevant to her future, a closed chapter rather than an ongoing threat. He'll hate that more than prison. Ordinary life without power or status to hide behind. The morning breeze carried the scent of rain and possibility as they stood in companionable silence, the city below oblivious to how fundamentally its power structure had shifted overnight. "Your new identity documents are ready?" Christian finally said, his tone carefully neutral. "As promised, freedom, resources, a fresh start wherever you choose." Amara turned to face him fully, setting her coffee aside as she studied the man who had transformed from feared mafia boss to something far more complex in her understanding. "And if I don't want to disappear?" she challenged softly. "What if I've found something worth staying for?" Christian's carefully maintained control faltered, vulnerability briefly visible in his expression before he mastered it. "That would be your choice," he replied, the emphasis on the final word carrying significant weight. "I promised you freedom. That includes freedom to determine your own path. 3 weeks ago, I was a waitress hiding bruises under makeup," Amara reflected, moving closer until barely inches separated them. "Now I've helped dismantle a trafficking ring and survived a mafia war." Her laugh held genuine wonder at the transformation. "I'm not the same woman who stumbled into your restaurant." The tension between them crackled with unspoken possibility, neither willing to make assumptions about the other's desires. "No," Christian agreed, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from her face with uncharacteristic gentleness. "You're extraordinary, Amara. Far more than you realize. I want to stay," she declared, the decision crystallizing with perfect clarity as she spoke it aloud. "Not as someone under your protection or as an obligation, but as a partner." She held his gaze steadily, confidence replacing the fear that had once defined her. "I've learned how this world works, and I'm good at it." Christian studied her for a long moment, weighing implications and possibilities before a rare, genuine smile transformed his features. "My organization could use someone with your intelligence and insight," he acknowledged, professional appreciation evident in his tone. "But is that really why you want to stay?" Amara closed the remaining distance between them, hands resting lightly on his chest as she looked up with newfound boldness. "You know it isn't," she admitted softly. "There's something between us, something that started that first night and has been growing ever since." The kiss, when it finally came, held none of the hesitation that had characterized their previous interactions, only certainty and promise, as Christian's arms encircled her waist. "The Kovalevs won't be the last challenge," he warned when they eventually parted. "This life isn't simple." "I don't want simple," Amara responded, the strength in her voice matching the determination in her eyes. "I want real, and this us is the most real thing I've ever known." The early morning light cast them in gold, illuminating two people transformed by circumstances neither had anticipated. A text message interrupted the moment, Christian's phone vibrating with news from his FBI contact. "The prosecution has everything they need," he reported, relief evident in the relaxing of his shoulders. "Peter's testimony, corroborated by the evidence we provided, creates an airtight case. The Kovalev organization will be dismantled completely, not just in Seattle." Amara processed this information, the finality of it settling into her bones with unexpected lightness. "What about the girls?" she asked, remembering the trafficking victims mentioned in the ledgers, the ones being moved through the docks. Her concern reflected the transformation from someone focused solely on survival to a woman with power to effect real change. "Already in protective custody," Christian assured her, pride evident in his expression as he recognized her priorities. "My foundation has arranged housing, counseling, and legal assistance for all 17 women recovered from the operation." He hesitated before adding, "I thought perhaps you might want to be involved with the rehabilitation program. Your perspective would be invaluable to women rebuilding their lives after trauma." Christian led her inside, fingers intertwined as they moved through the mansion that had evolved from refuge to home. "We'll need to restructure some operations," he mused, already incorporating her permanent presence into his plans. "Legitimate businesses, community investments, changes I've been considering for some time." Amara squeezed his hand, partnership solidifying between them with each shared thought. "A different kind of power," she suggested, the concept appealing after witnessing firsthand how influence could destroy or protect, one that builds rather than threatens. Weeks turned to months, as they carefully reconstructed both their lives and Christian's empire, transforming criminal enterprises into legitimate businesses, while maintaining the protective network that had initially saved Amara. "The restaurant opens tomorrow," Christian reminded her as they prepared for bed one evening. "Stellato's replacement, under your management." Full circle, Amara reflected, the symmetry not lost on her, as she considered how a desperate plea in that very establishment had altered her destiny. From serving tables to owning the place, she nestled against him, still marveling at how safety and passion could coexist. The grand opening drew Seattle's elite, curious about the mysterious couple who had emerged as surprising philanthropists following the Kovalev scandal. "To new beginnings," Christian proposed, raising his glass in a private toast as they watched their guests from a secluded corner. Amara clinked her glass against his, the diamond on her left hand, chosen by her, accepted freely rather than imposed, catching the light. And to surprising endings, she added with a smile that held no traces of her former fear. Sometimes the most shocking twist is finding strength where you least expect it. Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is what keeps me creating content like this.